Hello, I'm Malcolm Haslett.
And I'm Janice Baker. Our special guest on this program is the Honourable Emily Bourke, MLC.
Next on Our Time. Welcome to Our Time.
Our special guest is Emily Bourke. Welcome to our program.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, look, a pleasure. And you're a new young politician, which is fantastic to have in the Australian government, simply because I suppose everybody's view is that everybody has to be old to be in Parliament or in government generally.
Well, you just expect them to be a bit more warm.
No, it certainly is a perception, that is for sure. But it's actually an interesting comment, because in the South Australian Parliament we have a lot of young members of Parliament at the moment. Yeah,
but not before, not for.
Yeah, I guess it has changed. It's changed quite remarkably over the last couple of years. To be honest,
or is it just that we've got older and everybody else looks young? Is that?
No, I definitely think there is a lot of younger people in the Parliament. They've, had to change the menu in Parliament House because there's so many young kids that have joined mums and dads in Parliament now.
Thing.
So
you now see pasta now.
Yeah, we have pizza. The staples of any child, really. Chicken nuggets, pizza, those types of food now appear. Definitely the healthy choice. But,
I love it.
But it's definitely changed.
You're a mum. Mm-hmm. How do politics and mums go together? How do you make it work?
I guess what they say is you need a village to raise a family, and that's certainly how it works for me and my husband and my family. So we have 3 young girls. I have twins that are 8, and Lucy, who's 5, and who's also the boss of our house. But no, it's definitely a juggle. My husband also works full time, so it's really just a matter of scheduling it into the diary and making sure that we stick to that scheduling, really.
Is this something you always saw yourself doing?
Absolutely not.
Really?
No, not at all.
What did you want to do when you were growing up?
I studied photography, and I wanted to be behind the scenes, pretty much where your volunteers are tonight. So that's what really sparked my interest, and it also actually is what led me to politics. I grew up in regional South Australia and went to Adelaide to study, but I loved home, which is Yorke Peninsula, and I went back to work at the newspaper, the Country Times.
Well, for those who don't live in South Australia, that's the foot part of South Australia.
That funny leg thing,
Yes, the foot.
Yeah, so I went back there and worked for the local newspaper, and realised that you can change a family, you can change a story for one person by just helping them, get their message out there, be a voice for them, and then realised the value of being a voice for the community, and sort of went from there, and I got involved with politics after that. Yeah.
But your family, interesting to read some of your maiden speech, which your assistant, I think, sent to us, which was great, because in that you talk about how your family was part of sort of the first settlers here in South Australia.
It's certainly a funny thing to do, to give your first speech in Parliament. It's very similar to this, to be honest, to talk about yourself and to talk about where you've come from and where you're sort of going. But I really valued the experience of putting together my maiden speech. I found it quite an emotional process to go through my family history and find out where we've sort of come from and the achievements that our family have done along the way.
Well, skip through them, because it is really interesting. I'm very... because Australia is such a new country anyway, and we're only just starting to really learn about the original inhabitants here, but we're also only starting to learn about the people who settled here and why they came here in the first place.
Absolutely.
So your family story is?
Joseph Stace, who is from my mum's side, so it would be her great-great-grandfather, I'm guessing, something around there. He was in one of the first fleets that came over, and he was a brickmaker. So he was one of the first brickmakers to be here in South Australia, and helped build the stores and the shops that would then form South Australia and metropolitan Adelaide. But then on the other side, we like to claim that my great-grandfather was the first blacksmith ever to be registered in South Australia as well. So very much a family that builds things. We've used our hands to help build South Australia, I guess, from a very early stage.
I find that so fascinating, because I've often thought, when settlers came here, there was nothing. Just trees and a bit of water dribbling through and so on. And from nothing, because you couldn't exactly carry those things over. I know some stones and buildings were actually imported from the UK, but to come to nothing, you know, how strong have you got to be? How strong have the women got to be? How do you do what you've got to do? Have children, all of those things. It's just...
Yeah, well, I just sort of think the journey itself, getting here, you know, that step to get on the boat to begin with, you know, there must have been so many struggles happening at home, and that's what made them get onto that boat to begin with. But then to survive the trip here, and then to arrive and go, oh my goodness,
well, it was
where
sold
am
as
I?
utopia, wasn't it? South Australia was sold as utopia. That's the amazing thing, and yet there was nothing here to be utopic about, if that's a word. So, but in a way, you've gone through this in a similar sort of way in what you've become.
Yeah, I guess so. So it was nothing I ever anticipated.
No, first person in the family to embrace politics.
It was never discussed in our house. There was never any discussion around the kitchen table about politics. It was just not part of our life. It was very much based on working hard and supporting our family was really what life was about when I was a kid.
You're a big family?
Yeah, so I'm one of 5 children, and mum and dad, so we're a family of 7.
Yeah.
So we've got a photo here of, I think, your father.
Yes,
is it your father?
Right. Yes. So this photo, I love it. I keep it on my desk every day. I look at it to remind me that an idea is nothing if it's kept on a piece of paper. So we might have ideas, but if we just keep it on a piece of paper, that's all it is. But if we try, even if it seems like a crazy idea, to take on the odds and experiment and see if it happens.
So what was the idea?
The idea was to store grain on the ground without any cover. So it's a mesh it's made out of a mesh material, so the water drains off and runs away from the grain.
Right.
And it was stored on the ground, I think, for 6 months, and it didn't go rotten. So they proved everyone wrong, and then it was rolled out in silos across South Australia.
How amazing! I didn't know that.
So I keep it there as a reminder that I might think it's a crazy idea, but give it a go and see if a good outcome.
So this is your mantra, is it?
Yeah, I guess it's always. I am actually very well known for my crazy ideas. I'm very lucky that a few of them have worked, because I probably would be in a straitjacket or something. Some of them are quite crazy.
But Emily, I think, would you agree that most people go into politics because they feel they can make a difference, irrespective of the party? And we should say that you represent the Labor Party here in South Australia. But most people go into politics simply because I think I can make a difference. Is that...
Absolutely. Everyone goes into it thinking they're going to leave the state better than they found it.
Yes, and your hours of work, what are they? Because everybody thinks also, not everybody, but some people think politicians get it easy.
Oh, absolutely. We just stay home all day. And no, so it really does vary. A sitting week, a lot of people always say, oh, you're not sitting, so you mustn't be working. But the times we're not sitting in Parliament are actually the busiest times.
Well, they're called office work and public appearances and things.
That's right.
I guess.
So a day could consist of 5 events, going from one to the next, and often not knowing what you're actually even walking into. It can mean you're giving speech at one event, going to another event, and then giving a speech later on, and then going back and writing a speech ready for the next day. It's certainly a busy lifestyle, but it's one that you meet so many amazing people, like the people in your makeup room tonight, Phil and Sam, and there are other volunteers there who come have been coming for 10 years to make this show possible. Yep. And for me, they're the stories I love. The stories that, people that are willing to give up their time to keep a community program going. And that's exactly what we do.
Well, the frightening thing is, and we say this quite often, but here in South Australia, this is actually the only live program that people can come on to talk about anything. And you would know your adventures with the media are all going to be something like a 3-second bite from a 20-minute speech. And whether what you actually were trying to get across gets across or not, you've got no guarantee over. So we don't always know what politicians and who politicians are.
No,
do you feel like that?
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
And when people are being knocked off, particularly of the top spots, we've only ever seen them say, 10 or 12 words about a particular subject, but we have no real idea of why they said that, what their background was and so forth. And this being your first interview in this environment, how's it going so far?
Oh, my hands are still a little bit sweaty.
And we'll be back in a tick talking with Emily Bourke.
We have Emily Bourke with us. Emily Bourke, MLC. What's the MLC? What does that mean?
That's a very good question. So it's the chamber that most people try to forget exists. It's the upper house. I'm a member of the Legislative Council. So
it's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is a mouthful. So it's the Red Chamber. So we have the Red Chamber, which represents the entire state, and then you have the lower house, the House of Assembly, which represents the Green Chamber, which represents individual electorates. So there's 47 electorates across the state, and they represent about 25,000 people.
And your official title within that is?
I'm the Shadow Assistant Leader. I support the Leader of the Opposition.
Yes. So do you have to get underneath him and carry him along?
No, not at all. He would be way too heavy and awkward to carry. So.
Exactly.
No, I just help him out, because you were saying before about how busy our life schedules are. So when he can't get to an event, I often go along and support him with that. And I also work very closely with his office to support them as well.
So it must be, but you just said you have a young family, so it must be difficult.
Yeah, it's not unusual for me to have my young ones at a train station early in the morning before school, and they actually love it. And people often say to me, "Oh, you're dragging your kids along," but they have gained so much from the experience as well. They've met so many people that and have gone to so many events that not many 8-year-olds or a 5-year-old would go to.
Do you know, that's such the truth. I probably shouldn't say this on television, but unfortunately parents are so helicoptering with their children these days of trying to protect them from everything. They forget that need to be exposed to their lifestyle and the lifestyle of others is so important, because they're the seeds of their futures. To see what's going on in the world, to have an interest in the community and what's genuinely happening. But speaking of that, most mornings on breakfast television, irrespective of the station, we see politicians from all persuasions speaking. They're not bleary-eyed. They look like they've been up for a couple of hours, and they probably have been. Yeah. Do you also start at the crack of dawn?
Well, I have
with
to
a
be
family.
Very honest about this. I'm not a morning person. Even after having three children, I'm not a morning person. I was at a train station this morning at 7:30, but I wouldn't be getting up at 4:30 to do media or prepare myself for media like most people. This morning I left home probably at 7 a.m. And went to a train station and stood there to talk to local residents before they jumped on the train. And
see, that's early though.
Yeah, it is early, but it's just big. I guess it's relative, I guess. So there's lots of people that are heading to the train station at that hour of the day as well. So.
But do they want to talk to you at that hour of the day?
That is a good question. Usually the mornings are better, I find, than going home. People just want to get home. But mornings,
that's understandable.
Sometimes they miss their train and they're up for a good chat, or they're waiting for their train in the morning and they're happy to have a chat about what's bothering them or what's working.
But on top of that, so it's what time to get to bed at night if you're up that early?
I usually go to bed at about 11:30.
So you're a working mum and a working politician, and that's a long day for anybody.
It is a long day, but it's something I love doing. Yeah. It's something I don't actually see it as work, really. I'm sort of getting paid to do something I love doing and something I was doing as a volunteer for many, many years.
Then it's not work anymore, I agree.
And when you can change someone's life and you can see the outcome of that, it's a very rewarding job.
Yeah. Well, you have to be positive about everything, but there must be negative moments.
Oh, there's always negative moments.
Yeah, but there are in life generally.
I would be lying if there wasn't.
Yeah.
But it's true. You've got to politically cope with everything, really, don't you?
It is, and it's really tough some days. And it's hard on both sides because our job is in opposition, unfortunately when you're in opposition, is to hold the government to account.
Yes.
So most people see on TV question time because it's really the only fiery,
You mean
entertaining,
argument time?
Yeah.
arguing, acting like school children time in Parliament. And the reason why you have to be passionate and yelling is that you're holding a government to account. You know, are they doing the right thing? Are they investing your money and your family's money in the best way that they possibly can?
Do you think, though, this system's got a bit out of hand, though? Do you think with the way the world is, with the media the way it is, with the internet the way it is, we sort of can find about anything we want to know, anything at all? Does government, this is a bit controversial, I promised I wouldn't ask anything controversial, but it just hit me. Do you think that government needs to re-look at how practices are done, or are they actually doing this now for the modern age? Because the modern age is considerably different to the old years when the only way you'd find out what happened in Parliament was what was written in the paper, or if you were able to sit in the gallery.
Absolutely. This is a huge issue that we all struggle to handle. I know Bob Hawke and Paul Keating would often say they would have one story for the day and that was it.
Yes.
And they would, sort that out in the morning and then move on and actually get on with running the country. And now it's, what can be my story for this hour and what can be my story for the next hour and so on. So it is an issue, and I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario because the public are saying they're sick of hearing what politicians are doing, but there's also a need and so many avenues to get that story out through that you need to fill that hole. Otherwise, someone else will fill the hole for you. So it really is. It is a hard one to juggle.
I guess this is why you have press people, but. At the same time, while they're busily doing their job, you still are in politics to make things happen, not necessarily keep giving briefings to media. Is it becoming a bit of a waste of time, do you think?
Well, there's quite a reasonable sized team that surrounds the leader. I'm not doing media grabs every day, that's for sure. But for example,
you will be one?
Maybe. But the leader, for example, has media advisors, and he has political advisors, and he has general just advisors about what I'm doing today. And that's crucial because they are literally running from one thing to the next, and their day doesn't have a 30-second break in it. I was Jay Weatherall's Director of Strategy, and when you ask about work-life balance, there was no work-life balance in that role. That was a much more stressful environment to work in because you're keeping the government going. You're there to support a premier to keep the government rolling. And
with lots of balls in the air all at once.
There are so many balls in the air.
Do you see a long career for yourself?
I guess that's up to the public now.
But if they keep voting for you, do you feel, now that you're at the beginning of this, do you feel like this is something you'd like to do until you're, say, in your 60s?
I don't know if I'll be doing it until in my 60s. But,
your kids will have gone.
They'll have moved out of home. They'll be off and away.
You won't know what to do with yourself.
That's right. I love my job. It's an absolute privilege every single day to walk into a building and know that you can help every South Australian if you so can.
It's a beautiful building, isn't it?
It is a beautiful building, and on that is something I've done since being elected last 2 years ago, and that is to start something a little bit quirky, going back to those crazy ideas, and is to do Harry Potter parties in Parliament House.
How wonderful!
So
that's perfect.
The first one was quite tricky to get off the ground. It was something very new to happen, but when I had my kids come in, or school tours, which I really enjoy doing, is bringing school students into Parliament. They'd always go, oh, it's just like Harry Potter. So we decided, I hadn't really watched Harry Potter at this stage, but I've been reading the books to my kids, is to open up the doors of Parliament and have secret Harry Potter tours of Parliament House.
That's wonderful.
And we're, again, the third one just happened in October, and it's 3 sessions throughout the day, and 150 kids are coming along the school holidays.
What a great incentive! I love that.
Yes, I do.
Because it really sort of reeks with that architecture, doesn't it?
Absolutely, but the best thing about it is Parliament's seen as this big grey scary building
Yes.
on North Terrace,
Yeah.
and for me it's a building that's so full of history and it's not really shared. You know, if you ask kids at school who the Premier is or how the government works or what government is to manage, no one can answer the question. But the thing is, everyone is impacted by what happens in that building.
Exactly.
And everyone actually owns that building,
Yes.
and they should want to be a part of it and see what
Yes.
happens behind the
Great
scenes.
idea.
Can we talk to you for a minute about the feeling of being elected, that time of waiting to know whether you've been voted in? How did you feel?
That was a funny one, I have to say. As I was saying before, was Jay Weatherall's Director of Strategy, and I was absolutely devastated when we lost the election. I had thrown myself into it for 2 years, working extremely long hours in the hope that we had delivered enough to make sure that we could stay back in government and continue to finish what we had started.
Yes.
But we weren't successful, and I had only found out that I was going to be a candidate 12 hours before the writs were closed.
Oh, really?
The writs is when a political party have to have determined who their candidates are going to be.
Right.
And 12 hours out from our at the shut-off, a candidate of ours dropped off, decided that they wouldn't be running at the election. And I was a lucky one that found out 12 hours beforehand that I would be filling that spot.
I guess I'll have to do that then.
So I was
Goodness.
very overwhelmed by that,
No,
but I also didn't really have time to contemplate or consider really the weight of that opportunity at that time, because I was so worried about just winning.
And the day of the election,
Gosh.
how did you feel?
Well,
Before it was
talk about
announced.
starting early. That
Yes.
morning, with Jay, we went out to the the produce markets, and that day started at 4:30 in the morning. And we walked around and we met every grower that was there that morning, and then we went and stood on election booths all day. And to get to the end of the day, after just really appreciating how much you can change when you're in government, it is devastating to lose.
Yes, I'm sure.
To see the team around you that you have
Yes.
worked with day in and day out.
But you
Yes.
didn't lose because you were voted.
And I think that's what actually made it harder, to be really honest
Oh,
with
yes,
you.
I guess so.
really struggled with that.
The people
because-
I've worked with have gone, but I'm in.
You're still there.
And something that happens that no one knows about is that the day, 24 hours out, you have to pack up your boxes, win or lose. You don't know what's going to happen. But all staff have to pack their boxes and clear out their offices.
We're moving out. We're moving out. It's awful.
Because no one knows what the outcome's
Yes.
going to be.
No.
So if you win, you have to unpack your boxes again and put it all back. But
Good chance of cleaning everything up.
That's right,
Just
but-
hold the thought.
But when you're not, oh sorry.
Yeah, no, that's right. But we'll be back in a moment and we'll be talking a little bit more with Emily before it's time to say goodbye. What an interesting discussion.
Emily, you're just saying how, you know, when you're going for the government or voting, but you have to pack up everything on your desk, everybody has to, not knowing if they'll be coming back.
Is
Yeah.
when there's an election on.
Yes. So, I mean, that is such an awful thing to think
Clean
about.
up all the rubbish, though.
Yeah, I guess it is a way, I guess, of building up to possibly a bad outcome, or if you're unpacking your boxes, you're not going to be that worried. But it is hard when you've worked with people who are dedicated to something and
who become friends.
Absolutely, you see them more than you see your family,
Yes, I'm sure.
and to then see them lose their jobs and positions is hard. But it's also, the worst thing is to feel like that you've built to a point where these great policies and changes are occurring, and you have to walk away from
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's politics, isn't it? in
That's
the end
right,
of the
that
day?
is politics.
So, Emily, in 10 seconds flat, how have you found your first interview?
It's going very well. Lovely people, great company. No, it's going very well, thank
I
you.
think it's so important, though, for people to understand who our politicians actually are without talking politics.
Yeah.
Because we do vote for people, irrespective of who they represent, really. And you're clearly on the ascent. Is that right? Yes.
Ascent.
Because Sandy Verschaw, our Lord Mayor here, recommended that we talk to you because you've been such a help to her. So congratulations on both stances and good luck
She
for
has
the
to
future.
say that because I'm a constituent of hers.
I don't think that was the reason she said it. She said that to me privately. Look, it's been great to talk to you, hasn't
Emily,
it, Janice?
thank you very much for giving us your time.
Yeah,
No, thank
absolutely.
you for having me.
Time.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you again very soon on our next program of Our Time, because we're well over that 400 mark now. Amazing. Thanks for being part of it, and we'll see you soon. Keep yourself nice till then.